Hey everybody, welcome to Studio 64. My name's David. I've been searching the interzones for more science, space and tech news to share with you. I came across this at Sputnik International. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, what causes neurodegenerative diseases and how can they be staved off? This is really interesting. Interesting indeed. Alzheimer's disease has become a major problem for the development of society in any country in the world and a risk for the entire mankind, says Sergei Ilalioshkin. Sorry about that, Sergei, for mispronouncing your name there. Member of the Russian Academy of Sciences and deputy head of the Research Center of Neurology. Yes, with at least 35 to 40 million people across the world today suffering from either Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, per the most conservative estimates, their number is expected to double by 2035 and quadruple by 2050, he warns. We all want to live not just long but well, to remain healthy even when elderly. But no effective treatment for Alzheimer's currently exists, only methods that can mitigate the disease at its early stages. The academic, I can't even say that word. Academician. How about the academic? Remarked. Yes, terrible, David. Yeah, so, I mean, that's very simple. Why are we seeing this now? Is it just being more reported? Is it like a lot of other issues that we suffer from in society? Like, you know, violent crime is up or this is up. Was it just not reported before? You know what I'm trying to say? Incidents of certain illnesses, is it due to the fact that we've got stuff in the food that's causing it? You know, why is it all of a sudden, is this exploding, expected to double by 2035? Probably because we've got an aging population, you know, and quadruple by 2050. Any neurologists out there, can you please feel free to comment under this, because I'm not a scientist myself. I just find this quite fascinating. I love sharing all science, space and tech news, and this is a really troubling one. We've all got relatives, or we know of somebody at least who has had this in their family. My uncle, and sadly recently passed, and yeah, not very well his last few years, not good at all. And then there's poor old Joe Biden in America. As I say, I'm not a fan of his politics, but I don't want to see the guy suffer. I mean, that's absolutely appalling. You know, to see something like that happen is just, oh man, you know, just drives me completely crazy that we've got to, in this day and age, have to put up with things like this. What can cause Alzheimer's? Now, there's a number of factors that essentially determine the development of neurodegenerative diseases. One such factor probably is the most well-known. It's aging. Neurons being post-mitotic cells are incapable of division, which along with their hyperspecialization means they lack certain defense mechanisms. Ilyaroshin explains. Now, other factors include neurotoxins that humans inevitably come into contact with. Yeah, as I was saying, I wonder if it's in the water and the food and everything else. That certainly makes me think. A lot of these preservatives have a tendency to make me wonder. Oh, it could be. No, it could be a mistake. As I said, I'm not a scientist, but it's very interesting to think about. A number of studies show that agrichemical toxins, which were previously used aggressively in agriculture, directly cause Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Ilyaroshin notes, now the effect of all these substances was confirmed by experiments on cell cultures in lab animals. They induced changes at reproducing those diseases one for one. And yet another factor described as unusual by Ilyaroshin is the effect of infections, with recent studies revealing that people who suffered from COVID-19 in the past are more prone to Alzheimer's than similarly aged people who did not contract COVID-19. Or maybe it's got something to do with something that was associated with COVID-19. That will probably get me kicked off most platforms. Yeah, funny about that, isn't it? Something to do with just a little prick. Yes. Other studies identify smoke from wildfires as a potential risk factor. Apparently, this smoke contains dispersed particles of a particular molecular mass that act as a specific factor for the development of Alzheimer's changes in both humans and animals, as Ilyaroshin put it. Yeah, and there he is. There's Sergei himself. As I say, I do not care for a great deal for the way human beings treat each other politically, but scientists and things like that got a lot of respect for them. Yeah, so I'm just hoping that Sergei's got some good ideas and can work towards do his part in keeping this stuff under control and hopefully one day curing it. The inevitable aging of human tissues is also a factor, as it leads to the development of neurodegenerative diseases as the brain's natural defences gradually erode with time. Now, that said, there is also mechanisms to do the opposite with the improvement of the quality of life, the improvement of the education and the associated increase in the level of cognitive activity, and the improvement of healthcare, helping stave off neurodegenerative diseases. Now, how can neurodegenerative diseases be beaten? Now, it's important to keep in check the traditional diseases associated with the advanced age, such as high blood pressure, chronic obstructive lung disease, and diabetes. Ilya Oshkin says, arguing the importance of mobility as a way to deal with blood pressure and obesity. Yes, the lack of physical activity is the most important confirmed neurodegenerative disease risk factor, he stresses. Yes, as you get older, it's more important to, physically active, not necessarily climbing mountains, but at least getting up and moving. And that, of course, also combine that with, even if you're doing, even simple things like doing crosswords regularly to keep the old brain box running. They're incredibly important. I notice it myself that I'm not in that age range yet, but I notice that with, if I don't keep myself mentally active, my cognitive function has a tendency to, shall we say, not be at its most optimum. Yes, cognitive activity is just as important as physical activity, adds, noting that the brain is a very complex system that needs to be constantly exercised in order to function properly. The recipe of such mental exercise, Ilya Oshkin says, are already known. Studying foreign languages and reading fairly complex tests. I can't even speak. I think I'm going down that path myself. Complex texts that force readers to ponder on them and comprehend them. This is one of the reasons I do what I do with this, is because I love sharing science, space, and tech news. I'm not a scientist myself, but I love learning all about these different things, and that takes, you're going to read them and try and understand them. And the more I read and the more I understand, the more my brain goes, oh, do we have to? Yeah, okay. And that way I can, keep doing what I'm doing. I think it's fantastic. The symptoms of the brain's aging will inevitably emerge. So the academic argues that the importance of regular health checkups for people over 40, which can help identify risk factors in a timely manner and start dealing with them as soon as possible. Ilya Oshkin also insists on the importance of a good and relatively lengthy sleep. Apparently, when people are asleep, their brain's separate lymphatic system responsible for flushing out proteins responsible for causing various pathologies is especially active. At least 6 or 7 hours of sleep is mandatory. One cannot always feel themselves a beat every day, year after year, due to a lack of sleep. Yeah, that's one thing that I suffer from. I do suffer from broken sleep, and it does really hit me. It's not just the 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm starting to get a bit tired. If it happens on a regular basis, then it can certainly stuff you right up. And it just really infuriates me that I can't get a decent night's sleep sometimes. I wake up, I suffer from nocturia. Not going into too much detail, but you wake up in the middle of the night, go to visit the little boy's room, and then I lay back in bed and can't get back to sleep. And I'm just literally looking up, staring at the ceiling for hours at a time. It just drives me crazy. And this apparently, people asleep, their brain's separate lymphatic system responsible for flushing out proteins responsible for causing various pathologies is especially active. That goes for not just mental health, but physical health too. When you're sleeping, it allows your body to heal. So if you obviously, your doctor says bed rest, try to get some more sleep as well and you'll heal quicker. But also weight loss. You'll notice that I'm not exactly what you would call the poster boy for a weight loss company by any stretch of the imagination. And part of that, I believe, is because for years I've suffered from very poor sleep quality. I think that's got a lot to do with it. Yeah, it's interesting. I've got to watch the diet too, which I don't do as well as I should. I'm the first one to admit it. By the same token, not getting enough sleep certainly doesn't help. Neurodegenerative diseases, pathology and treatment. Now, neurodegenerative diseases develop for years before becoming apparent, with pathological processes emerging in the brain some 15 to 20 years before symptoms manifest. Problem is, by the time we first diagnose Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, 40 or 50% of neurons in the brain's key areas are already dead, which probably means that you've got onset Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, but it started 20 years beforehand. Interesting. I reckon that I have a funny feeling, it's just my opinion, just my theory, and neurologists could back this up, that we see early onset Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, and I think it's going to start getting earlier and earlier. Yeah, interesting. First clinical manifestations of the disease are detected when the brain's defensive mechanisms are nearly exhausted, which is why many medications have no effect. Ilya Oshkin laments. He thus advocates the importance of diagnosing neurodegenerative disorders as soon as possible, and the importance of taking note of symptoms that may actually be the harbingers of these diseases. These symptoms include slight memory loss, minor problems with spatial orientation, and having trouble performing routine actions and comprehending new information. Now, people often tell me, if I come to you and get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, can you treat it? Until recently, I would have said unlikely. We had several medications that only helped stabilise things at the disease's early stages, but things started to change. New medications that appeared in the world a few years ago helped flush out pathologic proteins from the brain, Ilya Oshkin adds. That's good. It's getting better. But we have to combine that with these new treatments, along with putting things in combination, such as, helping people get better sleep and things like that, and keeping our brains active. So it's not just one thing. Interesting, isn't it? The academic does note that the existing treatments may only help slow the progression of neurodegenerative diseases, but suggests that newer, more effective medications are going to be created in the future. Yes, fortunately, medications that affect not just the symptoms, but the flow of neurodegeneration started to appear, which is important, he says. We are entering the stage of molecular therapy related to neurodegeneration, not to mention the actively developed gene therapy methods, especially those meant for genetic diseases. Again, Ilya Oshkin stressed the importance of properly diagnosing the form of cognitive decline in the patient in order to prescribe the necessary medication. For that, the methods of early diagnosis need to be actively implemented and promoted, he said. Yeah, so that's something that we need to look at as well. Make sure early diagnosis is becoming more accurate, and also, obviously, all the other things that are thrown in, such as keeping your brain occupied, keeping yourself physically active, getting enough sleep and everything else. And then, hopefully one day we'll be able to eradicate it completely, which is obviously the goal. It's fascinating, isn't it? And also, as I said, very, very sad to watch somebody go down that path. As I said, I saw it with my uncle, and it's just not a good thing. I mean, I couldn't imagine being married to someone, say, for 60 years, and then you come in to see them and say, "Good morning, darling, how are you?" And they go, "Who the hell are you?" You can joke about it as much as you like, but that would be absolutely, I couldn't even imagine that. It'd be absolutely heartbreaking. Fascinating, isn't it? All right, well, my name is David. Thanks for joining me for another Studio 64 Science, Space and Tech News update. I shall see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. And if you're up for it, drop a comment down below the video, because I'd love to hear what you think. All right, take care, and as I always say, if you can't be good at it. As I also always say...